Hi there, Amanda Ludwig, Increase Expert. Lots of exciting things happening for small business again with the new bill, the new laws that went into effect at the end of 2020. And so I've got a couple of highlights for you, things that you need to be in the loop about, but also really important, I've got some next steps for you. So make sure you watch all the way until the end so that I can kind of coach you through what you need to be doing right now to ensure your eligibility for these programs and stay on top of things. There is rumors, of course, again, about some of the funding going really quickly. And so we need to be aware of what's happening and what you're eligible for and what you need to be doing right now. So first things first, the PPP. So a big part of this was that the PPP forgiveness will be tax deductible. So I'm going to read this note. Similar to the tax treatment for initial PPP loans, loan forgiveness on PPP second draws, because of course that's what's been added, a new ability to obtain PPP now as a second draw. That will also be non-taxable, and business expenses paid with PPP second draw funds will be tax deductible, all effective for tax years beginning after the date of enactment of the associated provision of the bill. So in summary, what you spent in payroll, you will be able to write that off, and you will not be taxed on the PPP funds as income. So that was how it came out, and then that was reversed, and now it's been reversed back to sort of what we all thought the original intention was. So that's excellent news from a tax standpoint. As far as getting the funding, if you did not get PPP the first time around, so that's what we're calling PPP first draw, if you did not get first draw, then you would be eligible for that funding because there's still money left in that fund. It cut off, but it cut off because of the date, not because that there was no money left. And so you'll be subject to the program's original eligibility rules. So again, if you did not get PPP first draw, then you're going to have to follow the original guidelines. However, if you did get first draw and you're interested in draw 2, PPP second draw, this is really important because this is a really big change. You have to demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in revenue compared to the equivalent quarter in 2019, right? So how does that work? If third quarter 2019, your revenues, let me back up. If your revenues third quarter 2020 were 25% less than your revenue third quarter 2019, then you meet the eligibility requirement. So it's any quarter in 2019 to 2020, the equivalent quarter, first quarter to first quarter, second quarter to second quarter. So an apples to apples comparison of 2019 to 2020, if there is this 25% reduction in revenue, then that will help you to meet the requirement. Of course, that's not the only requirement, but that's probably the one that I'm seeing is going to impact most people, whether or not they had that. The rest are, the number of employees, things like that. And so we will have to check for all of those to meet that you meet all the requirement. But that is something what you can be doing right now. You can be checking to make sure that you meet that requirement. All right. So that's a bit of homework that you can be working on right now. Now, if your accounting and bookkeeping is not up to date, you need to click, there's going to be a button below to schedule for a consult for those services. So if you just need to catch up your accounting so that you can pull reports that you can make this determination, that's step one. Second step, of course, is to schedule for a consult for the actual application process and all those. But we have to have the figures together a little bit different, again, than the first time around, because the first time around we needed a lot of payroll information. Second draw, we need payroll information, but we also have to look for this 25% reduction in gross receipts. Consistent with the initial PPP loans, in order to receive full forgiveness for PPP second draw, you have to allocate 60% of the PPP funds toward payroll cost. However, that other 40%, there is a lot more things that you're allowed to do with that other 40%. So second draw, and actually part of a modification to the guidelines for first draw, there's a lot of kind of looser requirements for how you can use that funding, and we've got a list of that. So that's great news on PPP. Now on the other program, the EIDL, so the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, great news on that front as well. So this has probably been the most popular, what people have been most excited about, even though it's a small sum of money, but again, this is something that changed midstream and was really disappointing when it happened. So now, just like PPP, there was a guideline, the guideline was reversed, now it's been reversed again, back to the original state. So business owners who missed out on the first round of EIDL advances or who did not qualify for the full $10,000 may now have a second chance at receiving this funding. So if you recall from EIDL early on, first it was $10,000 for everyone. Then it was $1,000 per employee. So if you only had 2 employees, you could only get $2,000 of the grant money. This is not the loan, but the grant that goes along with the loan. Then those funds were depleted. You can still get a loan, but there was no grant involved. And so now we're talking about $10,000 for everyone, some retroactive for those who didn't get it. So that's really good news with that. However, the part that has actually tightened up, so that requirement has loosened up. This requirement has tightened up. This is for the second round of EIDL grants. So business owners who are located in a low income community have suffered an economic loss of greater than 30% and employ less than 301 employees are considered eligible for up to the full grant of $10,000. So again, we're still waiting on the full regulations for these, but it's sounding like a lot of good news. More EIDL, the loan is still open, but also the more EIDL grants. Now, let's talk about tax credits. If you recall the employee retention tax credit, I didn't talk about that a whole lot. It's a good program, but we didn't really focus on it because you could not get those funds if you had gotten PPP. So if you got PPP first draw, you were excluded from these tax credits. Wonderful news, that has also changed. So now you are able to get the employee retention tax credits even if you got PPP first draw. However, the funds, no double dipping as we assumed. So if you use the tax credit for second quarter and use the PPP funding to cover your third quarter payroll costs, that's going to be fine. We're still waiting on all the regulations and guidelines on how all of that will work, but you can use them both in the same year as long as it's not double dipping and covering the same payroll costs. So really great news. That's up to $5,000 per employee for retaining them through COVID. So really, really good news on that front. Again, we need more guidelines to coach us through how all of that's going to work. So here is what we don't know as of today. Again, everything I'm telling you today could change tomorrow. If we've learned anything from 2020 and all of the different bills that passed and all of the regulations and all of the SBA's interim final ruling. I think there was 52 of those relating to PPP, something crazy like that. Don't quote me on that, and that can change too. But we know these things are subject to change, but as of the date of today, this is the newest information I can get for you. This is what we don't know right now. These are the questions that are still out there. So one, we don't know how we're going to be required to document the 25% drop in gross receipts. So we know that that is a requirement now to obtain the PPP second draw, but we don't know what is going to be asked of us to prove that. Is it just going to be a P&L? How much more legwork is going to be involved with that? The other is, if you recall, when PPP first draw came out, it had nothing to do with the EIDL grant. Those were two completely separate programs. Then when it came forgiveness time, the rules had changed, big surprise, and you were required to deduct the amount of your EIDL grant from your PPP forgiveness. So if you got the full $10,000 grant and applied for PPP forgiveness, you would forgive all of PPP except for $10,000, which we all thought was very strange. They had nothing to do with each other. Now they are reversing that, which is great news. But what we don't know is if you've already obtained your forgiveness for PPP first draw, how are we going to go back and retroactively recoup those funds? Is there going to be an application? How is that going to be given to you? How are we going to know how that process will work? Nobody knows. No regulations, no guidelines yet. We know that it's possible, but we don't know how all of that's going to work. So we're still waiting to get information on that. The next part, the EIDL 30% reduction. So we talked about 25% reduction on PPP. EIDL 30% reduction. When is that going to go into effect? And this is what's tricky about this one. EIDL is still taking applications. So you could apply for EIDL up until when this law passed. But now the law says you have to have a 30% reduction in order to qualify. Does that mean all applications going forward, or does the original EIDL money have to be depleted, and then to, when that funds are gone, then we're going to kind of be working out of a new pot of money? So new application process, new guidelines, no one knows. So we don't know, has that already taken effect? If I apply in the portal today, will there be questions about this 30% reduction? And that's what is unclear. The SBA is not able to answer any questions about that yet. So that's one we still have to keep an eye on. And then the employee retention tax credit, although it's wonderful news, we've not been given the guidelines for this because, of course, if all of your 941s for all your quarters have been filed, which I imagine they would be by now, then we're talking about amending 941s. And how would we amend them? What is that correction? If you've ever done a 941 correction, they're not difficult to do, but does the correction form, is it going to have the fields we need to fill out in order to be able to utilize these credits? So lots of questions. So that's then an IRS question. So then we're talking about IRS and SBA coordinating for those kinds of things. So a lot of questions out there. Lots of good news, but we are a little bit on hold for what is happening next, and for guidelines to be released so that we do this right the first time. So what you need to be doing right now, and this is really important, again, the PPP, there's rumors of that funding going quickly. I'm hopeful because they are releasing to smaller institutions first and really trying to target the smaller businesses and those that were hit the hardest. So I'm hopeful that the funds will be used properly, or helping those who could really use it the most. But there is, of course, there's always, talk about how quickly will they go. And so very first thing, again, if you don't have your bookkeeping and accounting in order, if you haven't, if your payroll forms and those types of things, if you don't have those readily available, if you outsource that, time to start collecting that type of information. Make sure you've got that on hand. Make sure your bookkeeping is up to date, that everything is tied out, reconciled, that you've got really clean financial statements. If you need help with that, there'll be a button below that we can talk to you about those kind of services. And then the other thing I need to do, and this is really important, we are starting a waiting list. And the reason I'm calling it a waiting list is we may not be able to do all the applications this go around. PPP first draw, the tax deadline was extended, so we prioritized the emergency funding. This go around, we still have, as a firm, we're looking at tax deadlines. We're looking at all the information going out to your tax preparer timely to give them enough time. And be kind to your tax preparers this year because there's so many new laws. Tax returns are going to be doubly difficult this year. So we need to make sure we get the information to them, all the write-up work is done so that they can file the taxes on time. And so because of that, we are doing this waiting list, one, because we can't do anything until the guidelines come out, right? So we need to know what you would like for us to do, which of the programs you're interested in. So we've got a link below for you to fill out a form to help us know which of the programs you're interested in. So when that information becomes available, we can contact you. But also we're calling it a waiting list because to be realistic, to this year meet the tax deadlines and complete this funding, the first go round we were able to bring more than $1 million to small businesses in our community. We're really proud of that, but we need to make sure that we're prioritizing correctly. And so we're asking folks to do this bit of homework, make sure your bookkeeping is in order, make sure you have all of your payroll information, and make sure you're communicating with your bank and find out what their process is going to be. Be doing all of those things now, and then go ahead and submit our inquiry form so that we've got you on the list, so that when we've got the information, we will start contacting you and kind of get the ball rolling on all of these. And if we don't think that we will get it done timely, if the funds are running out, we will communicate that as well, so that, you know, and try to point you to other sources of the same type of information. So really important to fill that out so that we've got you on the list and that we can be funneling information to you as it becomes available. So look for those links below. Of course, lots of information on our website, increase.expert. The most up-to-date information we will not email out every time, because there would be an email every day for as quickly as this stuff changes. The most up-to-date information you're going to find is going to be on the Increase Expert Facebook page. Increase Expert Facebook page. When there's new things, we post that because we could get it up quickly, easily, so we could get information. We're using that as a source of distributing information. And then, of course, you can connect with me directly on LinkedIn, Amanda Ludwig. I'm also posting the same thing on my LinkedIn as we are posting on Facebook, just so you can get really timely information. So really important that you're connected to us in one of those two ways, and that you submit your inquiry form when you finish watching this video. We'll make sure we've got you on the list, and that will also ensure that you get all future emails. You do need to submit the inquiry to get future information from us. We're going to try not to spam everyone's inboxes if this is not the type of information that you are interested in from Increase Expert. So more soon, I imagine. Hoping this go around is a little bit more smooth than last time. Hope that all of our small business clients are doing well, and this information today is encouraging for you. And I hope to have more positive updates soon.